This is Big Tasty Sports.
You guys, you're never going to believe this. JJ is back on the show after a multiple-week hiatus. JJ, welcome back in.
I love you, man. I appreciate your patience with me. You know, sometimes life sucks pretty hard, especially on Monday nights. So thanks for having me back. And I also, I was just looking at my background up there. I have an HVAC thing. Nice picture. Nothing like what Yanni comes to the table with some pretty cool shit back there and his son's photos. So thanks for having me back.
Dude, you are always welcome. It's always good to have you. And I've just found it's better not to compare myself with Yanni. It's just like I let him be, who he is, and then I just try to come in second. So we'll compete for that,
Yeah.
Yanni, how you doing on this Monday evening when we're recording?
Well, you probably could have compared yourself to me 2 weeks ago when I put up an 0-5-1 with my picks. So, but no, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. It was actually a really good and profitable week 9. So I'm glad to bounce back and ready to look ahead to these games in week 10.
I love it. All right, so a couple things to get out of the way. If you are not already doing it, I can't imagine why. Go follow at the Bet Crushers and at Yanni_bet. Also, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment and tell us what your favorite bet is for Week 10 in the NFL. And we'll respond to those if you leave some comments and see where we agree and where we maybe don't. We are going to run through a handful of the best games, and then we're going to go back and pick off ones that we like for betting purposes. We'll go through the matchups that probably are the best games first. But that doesn't mean that they're the only games that you should bet, although we would never tell you which ones to bet, just what we're doing. So we're going to start off with the San Francisco 49ers coming off their bye, going to Jacksonville. San Francisco on quite a skid right now, but they should be getting Deebo Samuel back. They got Chase Young from the Washington Commanders, so they've shored things up a bit. -3 right now on the Niners, though they are away from home in a total of 44.5. Yanni, we'll come to you first. The 49ers, is this slide for real, or do you see them getting right?
This team's getting right. This team is playing probably in the NFC Championship game. I barring obviously catastrophic injuries, obviously. Look, first of all, this is a good spot for them, even though it's on the road. I think this is a favorable matchup for them. I think having that bye week, that extra time, obviously getting a couple key players back. The Jags are flying high, and they're a pretty confident team. But this isn't necessarily the best matchup in the world for them. I'm expecting that San Francisco defense to really kind of pick up. In the last few weeks particularly, they haven't been as dominant as I think we thought they were, as they were earlier in the year. But I think when you look at the matchup here, they can match up pretty well as long as they can contain Calvin Ridley. And Ridley and Lawrence, they got off to that hot start in week 1, in the first half of that game against the Colts. They haven't done a whole lot since then. When you really look at it, it's been very mediocre. I think the Niners can shut down Jacksonville offensively, an offense that really has been underwhelming when you look at the players they have on it. I think they'll shut them down. And on the other side, Jacksonville stops the run really well. San Francisco runs the ball on anyone. I don't think you can stop this running game. So I think they're going to have success, which is going to put Jacksonville a little bit of a bind. I think Purdy bounces back here. I don't love the Jags pass rush outside of Josh Allen on the side. So I think this is just a really good spot for the Niners. I feel like, if we had looked back at this a couple weeks ago, this is probably a -5 spot. When you look at it here, we're now getting it at the key number of a field goal. Actually, if you had bet it this morning, you got 2.5. But even at 3 here, I think this is a great spot to get San Francisco. I think they do get right in this game. I think they probably win this game. I actually think they might win this game fairly convincingly. And I don't say that about the Jags too often, because I think the Jags are the type of team that they kind of battle with anybody. But I think in this game, San Francisco comes away with this. I like them a lot in this game.
JJ, why is Yanni wrong? Just kidding. You can say whatever you want.
I don't think he's wrong, and I don't have a real strong, in terms of handicapping the game like that to that level, I can't bring anything else more to the table. But here's what I just looked up. This reminded me a lot of KC when they came to Jacksonville in week 2. They were depressed. KC's price was arguably depressed because they lost to the opener to Detroit. They were -3. They won off -3, I believe. Here we got the same thing with San Francisco at Jacksonville, probably a depressed price on San Francisco because of the recent L's. So if they are bouncing back and if they're getting healthy, then this is very much so like that, where Kansas City, we confirmed our thoughts coming into the season that their defense is going to lead the way. It was going to be a bigger part of the team's success. And we do know that as a fact right now. So I think it's a very similar situation.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell anybody what to bet. Certainly after the way my last few weeks, I mean, at least I'm still positive on the season, but my last few weeks have not helped that. But I will say that I bet this spot already. And I think this is a great spot for the 49ers, like you were saying, Yanni. And my opinion on Jacksonville, too, and I was really high on Jacksonville coming into the season. I have a couple futures on them, which the over 9.5 is looking pretty good at this point with the way that their season has gone. But I've still been disappointed by Jacksonville to some extent, kind of pleasantly surprised by their defense a little bit, but and pleasantly surprised by Travis Etienne as well. But I don't know that the offense has really been clicking. And I will also say, I think it's a little bit of fool's gold, to be honest. If you go and look at the schedule, they beat the Falcons, they beat the Bills. That's a good win. But we've talked about how depleted that defense was when they played. They beat the Colts. I think there were some turnovers involved in that game again, as there usually are with the Colts. They beat the Saints, who I am really, really not high on. And they beat the Steelers, who I'm really, really not high on. So I think they've been beating up on mostly some pretty average teams, and I just don't think the 49ers are anything close to an average team. I also think we've talked about this before, but the 49ers are a team where I do think them having all their weapons makes a big difference. I think part of what makes them so dangerous is you don't know whether it's Debo or Ayuk or McCaffrey or Kittle getting the ball, and any of those guys can be fairly dominant. So I think getting Debo back, at least likely, I don't think it's 100% yet that I've heard, but it sounds likely that he'll play. I think that's actually a really big deal for the 49ers and makes them much more dangerous. So I like this to be a touchdown, and you can get -3 right now. So I like this spot quite a bit for the Niners. Any other thoughts on that one from either of you?
Sounds like we're all in agreement on this one. I think we all are seeing it the same way. That might be a little scary, but I think there's something there with that though. And
the market's saying the same thing.
Yeah,
the market's saying the same thing.
I'm just with you, Yanni. I think back to, and I know you have to take everything into account. The Niners have had this losing skid, and they have shown some chinks in the armor potentially there. I think they're not an especially deep team, maybe. But so coming off a bye is a good place for them. And I think if they, like you said, if they get some key injuries, that could be problematic for them long term. But man, 3 weeks ago, this team was like, are they going to, are they ever going to lose? And now I think they're playing like an above average team, but not one of the best teams. And only laying 3. I just think it's a good spot.
And I think you could reasonably argue that the bye was more beneficial to San Francisco just out of pure default that they were headed the wrong way versus Jacksonville, who was, on the upswing. So not that they didn't need the rest, not that they didn't need to get healthy, but there's got to be something to kind of being able to take a step back for San Francisco versus, Jacksonville kind of having to take a seat when they're on a nice little run.
Yeah, I like it. One other thing that I'll just get your guys' thoughts on, and actually I'd have to look up a line, but something else that I think is at least worth considering, and the last 3 weeks would kind of throw you off of this, but the 49ers had scored 30-plus points in all but one of Brock Purdy's starts until this last 3-game skid. And now I think the totals have come down a little bit. Do either of you have up what their team total is for this game?
I can tell you here if you give me 1 second. I haven't looked yet. It is 23.5. So
23.5. I don't mind it, man. That's another bet that I would be interested in. I just think yes, it's been a few weeks, but it was really consistent until then.
Yeah, I that's a really good call out.
All right. Well, it sounds like we're mostly on the same page there. And there could be some good spots. So Let's move on to the next one here. We are going to talk about the Cleveland Browns headed to the Baltimore Ravens. Man, it feels like Baltimore has started to put it together. Maybe 2 out of the last 3 weeks, big wins. A really big win against Seattle this last week, incredibly dominant. JJ, Cleveland obviously has the strong defense, and both these teams are still in the running for the AFC North. What do you think happens between the Ravens and the Browns this weekend?
I'm not a believer in Cleveland here. If I'm going purely off my, where my numbers are landing, I'm fine with laying up to a 6, so you can still get 5.5. I'm pretty much there. The problem is, and we were just talking about it on Sunday, where it's just like we saw them pretty much, well, they extremely dominated Seattle, and it's kind of like, this one seemed too easy, even though I didn't bet it. And I think like I'm really scarred from the first 6 weeks of this season where they did everything but cover the spread when I needed them to. But I think this is a spot where I'm willing to lay it against Cleveland. I'm not necessarily sold on their offense, and I don't think many people are. The defense is strong, but if Baltimore avoids doing a lot of stupid shit, they should cover this easily. That's my analysis. Sorry.
It's good analysis. I like it.
I'm a practical guy. I don't know what to tell you.
It's good. You don't have to tell me anything, man. You don't owe us anything. Yanni, how about you? You agree that this is a good spot and a decent number for the Ravens?
It's a decent number because I do think this should probably be 6.5. So I think, like JJ said, you can get it at 5.5. But to me, this is my favorite teaser leg of the week here. And for me, that's a real simple breakdown. The Baltimore Ravens are still big brother to the Cleveland Browns in this division. Now, are they going to come out and pummel them like they did Seattle? Probably not, just because I think that Browns defense is good enough to keep that game. I don't think Baltimore's going to, run the ball down their throat like they did Seattle there and, make the plays offensively there. But, when you look at the other side of the ball, that Baltimore Ravens defense is playing really well. And I don't think, honestly, when you look at that Browns offense, you take Amari Cooper out of that. What are they doing? They can't run. They can't run the ball without Nick Chubb. And, this is things like this sometimes go a little bit under the radar, but they lost their left tackle last week, who I didn't see the final report, but it looked like he was carted off. It looked like it was going to be one of those long-term season-ending type deals. Maybe not, but Wills is a good left tackle out there, and you can't underestimate losing a good left tackle against a defense like the Ravens. So you look at this offense that hasn't run the ball. Now, all of a sudden, that offensive line is a little bit weaker. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball in this game. That puts a lot of pressure on Watson, who have we seen anything that shows that he's going to be able to rise up against a good opponent and light it up? Plus, I think Baltimore has the horses in the secondary to match up with Cooper. So I think Cleveland struggles to score in this game. I don't know how much Baltimore will score, but I feel like at home, they're going to win this game. So I like this as a teaser spot. Again, Baltimore's kind of laying -6 at most books right now. You're basically get them at a pick at that point at home to beat Little Brother in an important game. I think you got to roll with Baltimore in a teaser if I'm betting this game, which I am.
And to add one more thing to that, I think especially with this type of thing, we know that Baltimore, I think we should gauge Baltimore's home field advantage, especially when they are making a legitimate run for the AFC championship. They have a significant home field advantage. And I know we're in the era of really kind of, we've left 3 long gone a decade ago, but to really give anything above 2 is really rare. And I think this is a venue that deserves something a little extra.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add, honestly. I think the big points to me here are that the Ravens defense feels almost sneaky good to me, and maybe that's just me not paying close enough attention to them. But if you asked me before probably a week or 2 ago, when I became a little more cognizant in looking at the numbers and stuff, how good they've been, and said, who are the top defenses in the league, I would have said Niners, Eagles, Cowboys, Browns. Those would have been the teams that I named. I wouldn't have named the Ravens. but the Ravens are right up there at the top, and they are across the board. They've been good against the run. They've been really good in coverage. And so I agree with you. I think Deshaun Watson is absolutely terrible. I mean, I know I've been tooting that horn for a while, and that's less and less of a hot take. But I do think coming into the year, we thought maybe he was going to be something. And I just think at this point, and probably in a few weeks, I'll be like, wow, I was really wrong on Deshaun Watson. It could happen. But I'm going to take the stand of I think that ship sailed. I think he's not a good quarterback, and their offense is going to really struggle. So I'm with you, Yanni. To me, it might be a low scoring game, and the total's 38.5. So obviously Vegas is saying it's going to be a low scoring game. But I just think Cleveland's going to really struggle to score here.
He's no better than Baker Mayfield. I mean, give me a break.
I mean,
when he's on the field, if he's on the field,
statistically, he's worse than Baker Mayfield. So
yeah.
I was going to say, watching him just this year, I'd take Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, one game, absolutely. Yeah.
So
he didn't lose it against Houston or whatever.
Yeah, the only thing that makes me a little nervous, and JJ, I think you alluded to this a little from earlier in the season, is I feel like the Ravens were so inconsistent.
Yeah.
But I feel like if they can be consistent and continue to put it all together, I think you have to put them in the conversation for the AFC title. I think they're that good, and I think it's going to be fun because I don't think they're far and away better than the Chiefs and the Bengals and whoever else you want to put at the top there. But I think it's at least going to be fun, and I think they're going to be part of the mix to make it to the Super Bowl if they can keep putting this together. So
KC Baltimore in the AFC Championship would be a hell of a game.
It would be.
Would you guys have any interest in the under? I know obviously it's a very low number there. I'll be honest, even at that low number, I don't hate the under in this game.
I wonder about what's the Browns team total under
16.5. So you're missing the key number of 17.
That's tough.
Because I was just going to say, Cleveland's defense is really good, but they've laid some eggs too. And I think that with an offense that has it rolling like Baltimore, it makes me nervous to include them in an under right now.
I think one thing you can look at here in these kind of games, Lamar will run. He actually ran more than I thought he would a week ago this past Sunday with Seattle, but he'll run in this game. If that Browns defense is able to kind of lock down the wide receivers and that, I think he'll take off. So even though we know his rushing prop will be high as it always is, to me, this is a week to consider playing it.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, man, it's so interesting with the Browns, how it feels like they're up and down. And also, I'm just looking away from home. They gave up 24 to Seattle, which I know that Seattle can be a tough place to play, and then, the crazy game where they gave up 38 to the Colts, and then they gave up 26 to the Steelers. Those are their 3 games away from home. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think this total's probably set at a pretty decent spot in my mind.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Even with the low number, I'm not opposed to going under on this game.
If you go under, let me know. I'll go with you, man. I love a good friggin' under sweat. I had the Baltimore game under this time. I thought this is toast. I'm toast.
You know what would be a good under sweat is with football is if you played under 10.5 alt total. That'd be a sweat
for a whole game.
Yeah, for the Browns here. You think the Browns are going to score more than 10?
Oh, for just the team. Okay, God. I think
game. I was like, damn, just
man.
the team total. Yeah, not for the whole game.
Hey, I know you got some big cojones, but that's something.
If this were a week to do it, it would be this one.
Yeah, it would. Yeah. All right. We'll leave it at that. Sounds like we're pretty aligned on the side here. What did you say, JJ?
I'm sorry. I said that bet would go very well with trashing. I can't remember his name. The massage guy, and him just spiking it right in your face.
He would. Maybe he'll throw 3 picks this week or something. Actually, he doesn't. It's not the picks. It's more like he throws it 5 feet in front of his receiver.
Yeah.
on the
Picks
ground.
can
That's
be
more
very
his thing.
bad for the under. Picks can be extremely bad for the
Yeah.
under.
Yeah,
For
they
sure.
can be, exactly. But good for the Cleveland team total under. That's what I'm saying. So. All right. Well, let's move on from that barn burner to one that has become interesting, or more interesting, I think, because of what has happened with these two teams in recent weeks. And that's the Houston Texans and all-time great CJ Stroud going to the Cincinnati Bengals, JJ Cincinnati Bengals, and it is up to -7. I was going to just check if it is -7 across the board on the Bengals. Vegas obviously believes that the Bengals are back and Houston has not yet quite arrived. Yanni, obviously it's been a bit of an explosion here from the Texans recently. Do you think they can keep this close, even have a chance to win, or are the Bengals just going to continue the run?
I think they can keep it close, maybe. But again, to me, it's just almost an automatic tease leg here. Obviously, we saw with CJ Stroud, he can go in, make things happen. So I don't think anybody would be shocked if Houston went in and won that game. I don't think we'd be in disbelief if that happened. But is he going to be able to light up the passing game like he did a week ago, going on the road there against certainly a better passing defense? On the flip side there, this game to me, if you think about it, we talk about this a lot. We talk about the league in tiers, and Houston and Tampa are kind of on that similar tier right now.
Mm-hmm.
Cincinnati's not. I know the record is because they obviously started the season out, but we've seen the difference a healthy Joe Burrow makes with that team. It makes all the difference in the world. The last 3 weeks we've witnessed it. I mean, it's the difference between them not being able to produce offense and being able to produce offense. So I think when you look at it there and you got Cincinnati figuring this out, I know CJ Stroud is obviously going to be entering that game confidently, but if anything, I know the Bengals are coming off a big win, but I mean, if anything, that's got to get them, I would say, more motivated in the sense that they know they have to keep pace in the AFC North, and they watched Houston light up the scoreboard. They watched Stroud light things up there. I think that keeps them a little more focused, to be honest, and not that I can read into their mental state and what they're going to be doing. But I think that this is a game where Cincinnati kind of comes out and we see that different tier where, unlike a back and forth game, I mean, I think there are half a dozen lead changes in that Texans and Tampa Bay game. I don't think that's going to be the case in this one. I think Cincinnati wins this. Could it be close? Could they get upset? Yeah, they could. If you don't like laying the points, which I'm not sure I do, to me, this is kind of that second teaser leg here to Baltimore. I think you take the two, in my opinion, best teams in the AFC North and you ride them to win at home.
Yeah, and both of them, I guess, but especially Cincinnati, they can't sleep on a game because of how they started the season. They need to keep winning to make sure that they even make the playoffs, let alone win the division or anything beyond that. So I think that puts them in a spot of not being able to look past a game. So, JJ, you feeling good about the Bengals this week?
Burrow is mobile. The wide receivers are hungry. They're all hungry, and he's feeding them. So they got to keep it, just like you said, they're not going to let their guard down. They can't let their guard down here. -7 is enough of a pill. 6.5 is enough of a pill. But like Yanni said, I mean, this just seems like a pretty just gotta go blindly, if anything, let alone the handicap supports it, being a teaser leg. Makes sense.
Yeah, I wish I had anything really against the grain to say here, but Yanni, I really like what you said about the tiers thing. And I think it's such an important thing to remember because the reality is, like last week, that was a phenomenal offensive performance from the Texans. And the Bucs aren't a trash D, is the thing. Like their defense is okay. And so it's not like they were playing the Giants and they did that or something. So I think that was a great performance. And I'm actually really interested to see over the rest of this season, but the next couple years where this can trend. Because if CJ Stroud can be more consistently what he's looked like in flashes this year, this Texans team is going to be a team to pay attention to going into next year, the year after. I think for this year, what I would say about the Texans, and this makes it to me a little bit harder to want to bet any of their games, it feels like one of those young teams, and you see this like in college basketball when a team's still trying to come together. The Texans, they do have some veteran presence, but they brought together so many free agents. They switched coaching staffs. They have this rookie quarterback where it's just going to be really up and down. I think the ceiling is high for the Texans. And I'll admit, like, the Texans right now, their ceiling is higher than I thought it would be, even just a couple weeks ago. Like they're proving me wrong to some extent. I didn't think they'd do what they're doing right now, even. So I think that they're just going to be inconsistent, though. I think they're going to lay 2 or 3 more eggs this year where you're like, what the hell happened to the Texans this week? And then they're going to have 2 or 3 more games where you're like, holy shit, how good are the Texans? And I just don't know which week's going to be which. So I agree with you. The Bengals are a mature team. They're a cohesive team. They need to keep winning. I think that this is like the Bengals at least win this game, 80% of the time. So JJ jumped out and now he's going to jump back in.
He froze
Let's see
out
here.
on us there.
JJ, were you so mad about my Bengals take that you just left or what?
No. I don't remember the Bengals take, but man, I'll tell you, I mean, I was watching on Red Zone, the Houston game, right? And I was the guy that laid 2.5. And do they have a kicker? Are they going to sign a kicker? Is he okay?
Oh, good question.
They'll have to. I'm sure they'll bring.
Yeah, I mean they'll get somebody to kick
Yeah.
field goals, but that was crazy because I don't mean to divert especially because I left your show and I came back. Thanks for letting me back in. But
You're welcome.
we both had, me and my wife had Houston in the contest, the pick contest, right? And so they go down there and the guy kicks the field goal to go up by 3 in the fourth quarter. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, we just need to stop. But they were down by 10, so they came back and now they're recovering by the hook. And she's like, okay, I'm going to go out for a walk. She goes out for a walk and misses all of everything from there on out that happened, except she walked in when they were on victory formation, up by 2 with the game pretty much over with. And she's like, what happened? I was like, I can't even begin to explain what happened in that game. That was insane.
A bad time for both of us because I had the Bucks money line in that one.
Oh God, yeah.
I thought they were going to win it outright, man. So and honestly, with under a minute left, I felt good about my bet. So
that was insane. Yeah, I can't believe they got down there again.
Hey, maybe we could start a service, JJ, where we get like bad middles like that, and then we could put those out for people to know exactly what the outcome of the game's going to be.
Featured middle.
Yeah,
featured reverse middle, but something like right on the homepage.
Do we think anything on the total for this one? We didn't talk about that. 46.5 here. Obviously both of these offenses have been running pretty hot. Does that keep going?
That was one of the first things I looked at with this game is to see where the total was, because I was curious, because I think your initial thought is that this is going to be a high scoring game. I have a feeling, and I don't, first of all, I have no play on the total here. Like I said, I'll probably tease Cincinnati, and that's where I'm going with this one. I have a feeling that this is going to be a lower scoring game. And I think that people are thinking, oh, Stroud's going to throw for 400 yards and Burrow's healthy in that offense. I don't know that that's the case. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if this is more of that, 23-17 type game, that doesn't get there. That I could be wrong. I mean, obviously we saw what those teams did, but again, I think this Bengals defense is going to do a little bit better job slowing down Houston here. So I think that total, actually, gut feeling is all that's going over. I actually lean the other way, but no play for me though on that.
I'm right on the fence too, but this is, I mean, it's Monday. Okay, it's Monday night, so not a lot of money in the market, whatever. This is asking for over. I mean, it's right under the 47. So it's saying, like, if you're going to pick a side based on a key number, you want to go over. But just like Yanni's saying, this is the type of game that should go under. But I think this is one where you kind of got to wait and see where the market goes, right? Make sure.
And I would imagine this is, and I mean, normally with totals, that's the direction it goes anyways, normally, unless there's weather or something involved or a key injury. Yep. But I would imagine this one does go up, if any of them. Yeah. I would not be surprised if this was at 47.5 by the time kickoff comes around.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So if you like the under, there's time to get a better number.
If I were going to bet the under, I would probably wait.
Yeah, I was just looking back at some of the scores, and I almost I think I'd probably be better off just betting the Bengals if I was going to do it. But I wonder about the Bengals team total over again. Just looking back, it's funny how quick I even forget. You know, it was this great performance for the Texans, and all of a sudden in your mind they become this high flying offense. It's the greatest show on turf is back. But they scored 20 against the Saints. They scored 19 against the Falcons. They did score 30 against the Steelers. I mean, they have some big totals.
Carolina, what did they score?
Well, Carolina's where they lost the game. Yeah, they scored 13
Yeah.
in that game, which was a dud. But then on the other side too, I just think, which are the great offenses that they've played? They played the Ravens in week 1, which I think with how the Ravens started, you just about throw out. They played the Jags in week 3 when I would say the Jags weren't up to full speed yet, and the Jags only scored 17 there, so that was pretty good. But I mean, they just gave up. If you want to talk about how great it was them scoring 39, they also gave up 37 to the Bucks. So I don't know. The Bengals are rolling right now, so I could definitely see the Bengals keeping their end of the bargain up in this game.
I'm assuming, do we know what that total is? I can look. I'm assuming it's 24.5.
Probably. I can look here.
I was gonna say I can look while you
we'll
guys
race to look it up.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna lose because I can't even find the game.
Well,
here
they
it
don't
is.
have it posted yet. I don't have it posted yet.
Yeah, I got it. It's over 26.5 is minus 120. It's minus 122 on DK though. Obviously, you could shop around. So over 27.5 is plus 110.
Whew.
So it's an expensive 26.5.
Wow.
So this is 27.20. That's where that's at.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that after all this talk, I think that teaser leg does sound good, Yanni, because I'm liking the Bengals more as we talk about it and look at some things here. And so getting that down to just needing them to win sounds pretty good to me. All right, let's move on to the next game. For now, I will skip over the Vikings and not make us talk about it, but you know I'm going to make you talk about it eventually. We'll go to the Detroit Lions, going to the LA Chargers. We're recording this on Monday night, so we haven't seen the Chargers play yet this week. Right now, the Lions on the road are minus 1.5. The total is 48.5, so a pretty relatively high total, especially this year. JJ, you think the Lions are able to go out to LA and kind of keep the train rolling here?
I mean, as a fan, yeah, I think so. I mean, they're certainly capable. I mean, they're good enough as a team, and I think they're the type of team that has gained in confidence, over the last couple years. That being said, I start to look at the numbers, notwithstanding tonight's game, and I see this a little more at parity. Both are different styles of teams, and the execution varies widely between the two. And maybe I'm just sour over the Chargers just kind of long term and wholesale of them always being one of the better teams in the league to find a way to blow a good game, especially one that you may have an interest in. So with that perspective, I'm a little bit slanted, and I'm a fan of the Lions, so I would certainly do it. But I'm on the fence in terms of pure numbers. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't know what to say about it. I think I want to see the Chargers and what they do with this kind of a layup type of situation, or are they going to get, are they going to get embarrassed by the Jets?
I'll let you know, JJ. They actually lose 17-16 on a last second field goal. So that's what happens in that game. I hope it does now. I'll cut this out if not. No,
I know. I'm kind of blown away.
Anyway.
I was going to say, do I need to bet the exacta here? What are we doing?
Exactly. I'm really feeling this one, guys.
I mean, you can tell we're trying to get some action because both Yanni and I were like frozen. Like,
are you serious?
Like some sort of a gift here?
Yanni, how you feeling about the Lions going out to the Chargers? Obviously, without seeing them play yet this week.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I think this is and obviously, until we see what the Chargers do, I mean, if the Chargers win 30-0 or lose or whatever, I mean, we're going to have a little bit of fluidity there. But I think this is a game that the public wins. And what I mean by that is I think the public is going to be on Detroit, and I think the public wins this one. This is kind of one of those where you're going to see 80% of the money or 80% of the bets on Detroit, and I think that the books are going to take it on this one. To me, it comes down to this. When I look at that Chargers team, obviously, I think none of us trust the coaching there. I mean, JJ referenced the fact that they always tend to find ways to blow it here, but I don't think this is a good matchup for the Chargers in this game. And even though it's technically a road game, Jared Goff obviously knows that stadium. We know that, the Chargers don't have much of a home field advantage other than that crazy Hawaiian Asian girl who's always like screaming that they now show on TV all the time.
Super fan.
Talk about a super fan, man. I mean, I thought I was into Bills games, but I don't think I've ever been into a game that much. Anyways,
I want to see you be a fan of the Bills like that, Yanni. You should do a live stream.
Yeah, I digress. But no, when you look at the Chargers, there's a couple things here. First of all, their defense, which I still don't think is very good, is predicated on edge rushing. The Lions are very good at edge pass blocking with their tackles, maybe the best team in the league at that. So you start saying, okay, if they neutralize that, where is that Chargers defense at that point? I don't like where they're at. So I think at that point, if Goff's got time, he carves that secondary apart. In my opinion here. And I think you can still run on the Chargers. They have been much better this year than they were a year ago, but they're still not great at stopping the run. So I think that, they can get enough out of the running game there to kind of keep it honest. And then you flip it over there. The Chargers are, they're missing some key weapons to throw the football to. I think that Eckler, this is not a game where Eckler gets a lot of rushing yards here. Now, could he catch some passes and all that? Sure. I mean, he probably will. But I don't know. I just think that the Lions, this is kind of, to me, this is truly where the Lions turn the corner, in my opinion here. This is a kind of I don't want to call it a statement road win, but it's an impressive road win that a good team makes. And, in the past, it was like, even when the Lions were okay, when they went on the road, they weren't going to win. And I think that this is where we see that shift to where they expect to win. Their fans expect them to win. I expect them to win. And I just think that the matchup is right for them here, that they're going to come. Yeah, I think this is it. So again, we'll see. Maybe the Chargers come out and, who knows what happens tonight. But I like Detroit in this game, even though the public, I think, is going to be all over them unless the Chargers win 30-0 tonight, which I don't think is going to happen.
Yeah, that would be pretty shocking. I don't have a lot to add here. This is one of those games that we just run into from time to time where I think I will be very happy to watch this game, and I really don't know what to do with betting this game. And it is a little, Yanni, I hope what you're saying is right. Honestly, the Vikings are going nowhere. If the Vikings can't, then I want it to be the Lions, so, and I enjoy watching them. I think it's a balanced team. We've talked about that a number of times, how there are quite a few teams in the league who are not balanced. And I think Detroit is pretty balanced. So I like that. I like them getting David Montgomery back. It's just like, I just never know what to do with the Chargers, man. We've been saying it forever, but it's like, I always think, well, but I just think they're better than what they almost ever play like. And I think the Chargers at their best give the Lions a really good game. And I think it's probably as close as what this line says. I think it ends up being something like a pick 'em. But if the Lions can get a decisive win here against the Chargers team, like, that wouldn't be shocking either. And I'd be happy to see it. But I don't have too much to add on this one, I'll have to say. So I feel like we gave anyone as much as they could want with the Yanni Chargers fan impression anyway. Like, that's worth showing up for right there.
Just leave that taste in your mouth.
It's honestly a good impression. If you're listening to the podcast, you probably want to jump over to YouTube and just look up this timestamp because it's worth it. All right. Anything else on that game total or anything else before we move on? Take that as a no. All right. Well, that's some of the big games of the week. So now what we're going to do is just kind of take turns jumping around. If you have a game that you like from a betting perspective or just that is of interest to you, Let's just throw that out there and see if anybody has some good thoughts on it. I'm actually going to start, and that'll give you guys a little time to look a little more if you need to. I'm going to shock the world with where I'm going right now. I'm going to take us to the Twin Cities, where the New Orleans Saints come and visit the Josh Dobbs-led Minnesota Vikings. I know it was a great comeback, but I laughed just because, like, the thing that stood out the most to me was he put the ball on the ground 3 times, and that's like the most Vikings thing ever to do. Yet they still won, which was insane. Only against the Falcons, who have no coaching. So here's just a couple things that are interesting to me in this game. Number one, Justin Jefferson might be coming back. I think that's still a little bit up in the air whether they're going to hold him out or not. And KJ Osborne went down with concussion. Am I right about that with Justin Jefferson, or am I off a week on that?
I don't know for sure. This would be I think this would be week 4, would it not? Or would this be week 5?
I thought this was week 5. I'll maybe try to look it up while we're talking.
I think it's week 4, but don't quote me on that.
All right. Well, Yanni, you're pretty much always right, but I'm still going to look it up later. But here's the thing is they've said they're going to be careful with Justin Jefferson, so I don't think they can count on him playing, even if it was a week where he's eligible, which I will look up, and it's probably something I should know. Also, I don't believe in Josh Dobbs a ton. I mean, it's good that they got him now because they need somebody to play quarterback. Obviously, Josh Dobbs is like a serviceable backup kind of NFL quarterback. The thing for me, though, is that the Vikings defense has been playing better. I don't mean that they're a great defense. I will never say that, but they're at least doing enough to keep the Vikings in games. I think the Vikings scheme has been working, and the biggest thing is that their offensive line has been good. And that's always been a problem in the past, and it's been different, especially recently here this year. And I'm just really not high on the Saints, is where the Saints almost feel a little bit to me like how I feel about the Chargers. Like, I think they should be really good.
Too.
I think, Chris Olave and Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, I mean, he's aging a little bit, but still. And then their defense is solid. That's what everybody says. And they have had some big games, and they do have some decent coverage pieces and stuff, but they just underperform like nobody's business. I mean, this team might not win their own division, and they have Atlanta and Tampa Bay as their competition. I think it's pretty pathetic. So I think New Orleans going on the road to Minnesota with a team that's playing decent overall, this is at 2.5 right now. Where I'm at right now, but I'm looking for you guys to talk me out of it, is if it gets to +3, I think I'd play the Vikings here. Yanni, what do you think about this game? If it gets to 3, is that crazy? Minnesota just have too much going against them right now?
It's not crazy. I mean, you brought up some very valid points, I think. And I had that Saints and Bears game on one of my TVs because I had the Saints teased. And I found myself watching that game and really just being annoyed with the Saints, if that's the right word. Just because, I'm watching this game and I'm like, how are they letting this happen? How is Darnell Mooney getting open? This defense is supposed to be good. How are they not, slowing down the run when you have Bajent playing quarterback? I'm watching these things happen. And then on the flip side, it's like they should have been carving that defense up. And they did okay offensively. They weren't bad, but they also weren't explosive. And, the crazy thing with that Saints team is the only time they look good on offense is when Taysom Hill's in the ball game, whether he's lined up at receiver, tight end, quarter. That seems to be the only time they look like they can move the freaking ball. Now, the one thing I would say that's good for the Saints is they seem to have figured that out. So they seem to be incorporating him more and more every week. So kudos to them for recognizing that. But you're right. I don't love him, but I'll say this though. What Dobbs did this last week was pretty amazing. I mean, to come into a new team in less than a week. I mean, we saw Mayfield do it with the Rams a year ago, and that's really freaking impressive. And I mean, he looked well, other than putting the ball on the ground and some of those kind of wild things. I mean, he looked okay. Like, it was like, oh, wow, he found the open receiver. I mean, he looked like he was doing well. And I think you bring up some valid points about the Vikings offensive line, the improved defense, which I think is vastly improved. I think their defense is actually pretty darn good. Certainly compared to last year, but overall, I think overall, I think they're pretty darn good. And you start looking at that and you say, okay, they do have some weapons. I mean, Hawkinson's still there, doing his thing, and Addison, we know, is playing some good football. I know he had a couple drops, but he was good. Jefferson, a key, like you said, I don't know how much he'll play if he is back, but I don't, to me, I'm going to have to say I'm on the opposite side here, and not because I love the Saints, because like I said, when I watched that team play against the Bears, it just doesn't jive, if that makes sense. Like, it's just clunky. There's something not there. But I think for me, when I look at this and it's a field goal game or under a field goal game at this point in a dome stadium here, I feel like this is kind of one of those ugly games that the Saints can win 20-17, if that makes sense. Now, to your point, if it gets to 3 and you want to take a chance with that, I wouldn't hate it. I think I wouldn't take it at 2.5 for whatever it's worth, because to me, the most likely outcome of this game is the Saints probably win it by a field goal. So, 2.5 obviously is key. If it gets to 3 and you want to, roll the dice with the Vikings at that point, I wouldn't hate it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I agree about the 2.5. JJ, before I kick it to you, 2 other things. One I looked up and one I forgot that I was going to say. The first one is Justin Jefferson is eligible to come back this week. So it'll be a question of whether he does or not. That doesn't mean he's coming back. The other one is, you guys know that I like to talk about turnovers. So if you lose the turnover battle by 2, you have a -2 turnover differential. You have like a 9% chance to win a game historically. The Saints had a turnover differential of +5 against the Bears, and they won by 7.
Oh my gosh.
That's like an absolutely atrocious result given 5 turnovers. So, JJ, any thoughts on this one before we move on to something else?
I kind of feel my blood pressure rising. You talking about that? Like, I'm looking at me and Yanni's text message Sunday, and he's just like, he's salty about not getting the field goal, and then I just devolved to F this guy. What's with, they're tough. I'm with you. They're like the Chargers. I want nothing to do with them. I want nothing to do with this game. I am extremely impressed as well by Josh Dobbs. He's a brilliant, really smart guy anyways. The problem is, that's probably what you expect, that amount of volatility for a full game. So when we saw it with Arizona, it's what you're going to get. But I think, his brilliance is also reflected in the fact that he probably paid special attention at team orientation when he was onboarded by the Vikings about the whole, ball security is very optional in this franchise. So you could tell he was paying attention to the meeting too. So yeah,
he's like, I got to fit in somehow. I got it.
Is it a coincidence that you are especially interested in studying turnovers and you're a Vikings fan? Is that just coincidental, or
I only think it's a coincidence because I started doing that last year and it wasn't so pronounced last year like it is this year. So maybe it was, prescient or whatever. It was looking ahead to this year and knowing that it would be a big deal. So. All right. Well, next week we'll see who was on the right side of a game that neither of us will probably bet, Yanni. Yanni, do you have a game that's sticking out to you betting wise or that you're interested in here?
I'll be honest, I don't, and I hate to punt like that, but when you look at the rest of the slate that we haven't covered, you've got the Bears and Panthers. Does anyone want any part of that? I want nothing to do with that. I do think the Colts and Pats game is a little bit interesting overseas. And ironically, even though I think the Colts are a better team, I kind of like New England in this spot, but I'm not betting it. I'm not touching Mac Jones and that Patriots team at this point. I think the Steelers and Green Bay is an interesting game. The problem here for me is I think you've got 2 crappy teams, to be honest with you. And it's like you try to find some sort of edge where maybe one team's overvalued or undervalued. And I don't think you really have it here because it's like, man, I'd love to fade the Packers, right? But then it's like, do I want to fade them with the Steelers laying points? I feel like this is a game where if you're betting it, you got to take the Steelers at home. But do I want to lay 3 points with that Pittsburgh team? Not really. And then I think the last one that I don't have any interest in betting, but I think is interesting is that Titans and Buccaneers game. And I think the Will Levis thing is something that we need to keep an eye on to see how this Tennessee team looks the rest of the year with him at quarterback. I mean, I feel like at this point, regardless of what happens with Tannehill, this is his job to lose at this point. So, let's see, can he kind of back up some solid performances against a team that just gave up 39 points to CJ Stroud there. So I'm interested in that game, not necessarily betting it. The one thing I will say, and I hate to even put this out publicly because this is like NFL betting 101, you don't do this, but I'll be honest with you. I put a bet in on the Dallas Cowboys minus 16 points against the Giants. And that, again, I'm almost embarrassed to say it because you just don't do that. You don't do that in the NFL. But to me, it was worth a unit wager because I just don't see how the Giants score points in this game. I mean, Tommy DeVito is absolutely terrible at the quarterback position there. I think that Dallas defense turns him over multiple times. And then, that Giants defense, once they realize it's not happening, I think that game's going to get away. And if there's one thing we know about Dallas, when they start rolling, they start rolling. So, to me, it's crazy to lay 16 points in an NFL game, but I'll be honest, I'm interested in looking at alt lines beyond that as well.
Yeah, Yanni, honestly, that's something I was going to say is the last time that I was super confident that Dallas was going to roll a really shitty team was when they lost to the Cardinals.
Cardinals, yeah, me too.
But Yanni, to your point, like I feel like actually, to me, the most likely outcomes are the Cowboys screw around and maybe still win this game, but win it by like a touchdown, or they win by 30. Like I feel like like you're saying, they get rolling and it's ridiculous. We've seen that numerous times now. And I thought overall they played pretty well against Philadelphia even. So I definitely can see what you're saying. And it might sound crazy, but I'm actually with you that I would consider an alt total on Dallas this week. Because if they get rolling, I think they'll just truck them.
I'm considering it.
Yep. JJ, how many points are you willing to lay on the Cowboys this week?
As many as you guys are. I'm down. So here, my little secret is when Yanni, you said that, and I wasn't sure if you were joking or if you were serious. But then, when I realized you were serious, I'm in on it too. Because the awesome thing is, I'm going to be down there with Yanni watching football on Sunday. Wow. So now, however high he wants to crank this thing up, I'm going with him. We're going to be there pulling for him.
My gosh,
yeah, we might go 27.5. We'll see. Let's see.
I'm feeling very left out. That's exciting. You guys should go big. I mean, then you can make like a TikTok video of yourself celebrating when you win that alt total.
I mean, I'm always down for making it rain. You know what I mean? But
if we win an alt line minus 27.5, I'll make a video for that, man. I mean, come on, you gotta be able to celebrate something. I mean, come on.
Oh yeah, we'll get
plus
everybody
365 on DraftKings right now for 27.5.
365.
28. If you're okay with the push at 28, you can get plus 414 on DraftKings. So it's a pretty good payout. I mean, go big. I like it.
It's possible. We'll see what the weekend brings. Yeah.
I think it's actually very possible.
Oh yeah.
But other than that, this is kind of, I feel kind of bummed out because there's just a lot of games I want to avoid. However, just like Yanni and you just said, they're all kind of interesting and intriguing in their own way, all the way from, Green Bay, Pittsburgh, like what are we going to get out of this? And I'm really, if I was going to go anywhere, it would be Pittsburgh, only because, okay, Pickett, Love, whatever. I mean, take your pick, offensive coordinator, whoever the mastermind of both of these offenses can pretty much go take a hike themselves too. It's like, what is worse? What is more damaging? Love against a defense like Pittsburgh that can wreak havoc, or Pickett against, kind of just being generally ineffective against Green Bay. So you would think that Pittsburgh is the side, but there's no way that game, New Orleans, Minnesota, which would be super interesting to see how volatile those teams are. All of them are really kind of interesting and should make for some really good football to watch. But yeah, other than the ones we discussed earlier and maybe a couple other spots that we come up with, team totals, whatever it may be, it's going to be a lot of entertainment, probably less volume than the last couple of weeks for me.
Yeah. I like your point about these games having their own angles that make them interesting, though. I think that's good. I'm going to just throw one other one out before we wrap up here that is of interest to me, and I'd be curious your guys' take. This is another one. I'm not sure that I would bet this, but the line stuck out to me a little bit. So Kyler Murray's supposed to be coming back to start this week. However, if you listen, and I think that the line is really reflecting that. And plus, Atlanta, I mean, losing to Minnesota last week, they haven't looked great, but this is basically a pick 'em. I mean, maybe Atlanta is -1, and it's in Arizona. But if you listen to doctors, Kyler Murray coming back off this type of injury, it's to be expected that he's going to take a performance hit and not be as mobile for the rest of this season, though he's still going to be better than Josh Dobbs. He's going to be better than Clayton Tune, for sure. Also, I think James Conner is eligible to come back this week, and James Conner was playing really well before he got injured. He's an older guy. Is he going to be able to come back and perform well still? I mean, maybe. I'm not saying he won't, but I think that's an interesting question. Outside of that, though, I don't think Kyler Murray is a savior. Like, I don't think he comes in and just makes this team a good team. Their defense still is not great, and yes, they've played better than I thought they would in many games, but I think without a doubt is still a very bottom of the league type of team. And I think it's interesting that we're getting basically a pick 'em line. Now, a couple things on the Falcons for me. One, I have no idea what they're doing most of the time. Like
they don't either.
Yeah, they don't either. I mean, with the talent that they have, like that's the thing that's scary. Is yes, this is a team that you can't count on them to be smart or do what they're supposed to do much at all, probably especially because of the coaching. So yes, that is true.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's interesting, and I mean, I can't put too much stock into this, but I've been doing this wins over expectation model based on turnovers, which basically tells you are teams winning more or less than they should based on the number of turnovers that they're or by game, not overall number of turnovers, but by game, the turnover differential they have. And Atlanta, I'd have to go back and look, but they're actually like 5th or 6th in the league of wins over expectation based on turnovers. So that means they're winning more than they should based on the amount that they're turning the ball over. And that's not factoring. I'm going to work on this in the future. Right now, it doesn't factor in opponents. It's purely based just on turnover differential. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. But that's just one input to me that says, like, I just think Atlanta is an average team. And I think they're going to lay some terrible eggs and it's going to look horrible. But I also think they're still, we talk about the tiers thing. To me, Atlanta is a different tier than the Cardinals still. And Atlanta's a middle tier. They're not a top tier, but I think the Cardinals are a bottom tier. And so I'm at least interested or tempted at a pick 'em price tag to take the Falcons against the Cardinals. Any thoughts on that one?
I was just going to jump in real quick. I was looking at, the odds here that at FanDuel, you can get +1.5 on Atlanta. At DraftKings, you can get +2 on Arizona. So it's really kind of interesting.
Wow.
And those are like two common ones that anybody can bet maybe a little something at. But that's really interesting to see. Then you also see just some straight up pick 'em. So I don't know, man. This is another one that's very interesting to see what we get out of what should be a dominant Atlanta team, just purely based on class. But they're like hanging on to that, that middle tier at this point in time.
It's never pretty.
They got to pull themselves
never pretty
up.
with them.
No. But they have. I mean, did they not seem to have a little more life to him with Heineke? I'm not saying he's great, but I mean, he was willing to pass the ball down the field.
Yeah, I think Heineke is the key here. I think he gives them just a slight edge over Ritter, and I realize he's probably not as mobile, but I think his ability to get the ball out and throw it. I mean, we saw, he had some guys make some plays for him, and if Drake London comes back, he's got some playmakers potentially he can get the ball to. But I'm with you, Tate. I mean, if I am betting this game, and I don't think that I will, but if I am, it's the Falcons or nothing. I mean, I sure as hell am not betting on Clayton Tune. And I'm with you. I don't know that Murray coming back in his first start. I mean, you watch a lot of these guys coming back off those major knee injuries, especially the ones that rely on it. I can speak from experience with a couple of my Bills that have gone through that. They're just not the same guy right away. And, Murray, his game is predicated on his ability to move around, get out of the pocket. If he can't do that, I don't know that he's, like you said, a good enough pocket passer, or that they have enough weapons to throw the ball to. But, like you said, is Connor going to play, whatever? So I think you can potentially wait on this game before you do, if you want to bet on it before you do anything. But for me, if I were betting it, I'm with you. I'm in Atlanta or nothing on this one.
Very good. Well, this will be a blast from the past by the time anyone hears this, but I do just want to say I just placed a large $1 wager on Jet 17, Charger 16 at plus 8,000.
All right, that would be so awesome. Yeah.
So let's go. Let's go. It's a big night.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thanks for jumping on. JJ, awesome to have you back again. Yanni, always a great time talking football. Appreciate it, fellas.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.